lectures and documentaries. 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to be showing a film called I Have Never Forgotten You. It's the life and legacy of Simon Wiesenthal. And that will take place at the Westlake Village Cinema. That's on Monday, March the 17th. You could get your tickets in advance by going on jewishacademy.com or regencymovies.com. Again, that's a documentary film on the life of Simon Wiesenthal, the Holocaust survivor who spent his life tracking down Nazis to bring them to justice. There's also a series going on of lectures on Wednesday evenings that I will be giving. This Wednesday we'll be talking on the topic is the power of memories, the importance of memories within Judaism. So much of Judaism rests on memories. In fact, the very word Yizkor that you're all so familiar with, Yizkor means to remember. Passover is all about remembering. And so we're going to focus on this lecture on the importance of memory, of remembering things of the past and the effect that that has on us in the present and in the future. That's this Wednesday night, 2 nights from tonight at 8 o'clock. Next Wednesday night, the subject is going to be on modern-day miracles. Do we see modern-day miracles taking place? How come we don't see miracles along the likes of the splitting of the sea and the manna from the heaven? It was easy for them to believe. They saw these miracles. What about us in our generation? We're going to take a closer look at miracles in our time. That's next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. And again, you're all invited to join us for that. Also upcoming, you have in front of you the Friendship Circle newsletter, our walkathon for the wonderful program of the Friendship Circle that helps children with special needs in our community. It's Sunday, March the 30th. We invite all of you to be a part of it, to come walk with us on that day. You can go on the website, you find out all the information, friendshipwalk.com. It's very easy, and it tells you all about the Friendship Circle and how you can help and participate and be part of this wonderful program in our community that is really anchored and done by teenagers. Now close to 250 teenagers in our community that volunteer their time to help with the children with special needs in our community. Tonight, the focus, raising kids to stay Jewish and love it. The 5 secrets of great Jewish families. And we have a wonderful speaker, Doron Kornbluth, with us tonight, who's traveling the country speaking on this subject, and also the subject of his book, Why Marry Jewish. And in the talk tonight, originally it was marketed on the subject of raising kids to stay Jewish and love it, 5 secrets of great Jewish families. Some of you that have called want to hear more on the focus of the subject, Why Marry Jewish, dealing more with older children. And so Doron will handle both subjects tonight. We'll get 2 for the price of 1. The first part of his lecture, he'll be focusing on raising kids to stay Jewish. If you notice the picture, we had a young kid there. But he'll also, specifically also in the question and answer segment of the program, be taking your questions, dealing with older children and dealing with issues of why marry Jewish when it comes to the marriageable age. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium Doron Kornbluth for our speaker tonight.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Brisky. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you all for coming. I once heard a story about George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw was a famous British playwright, literist, and he was invited to speak at a dinner function. He responded positively, and he said, what do you want me to speak about? So the host said, well, you're the expert in English literature. Why don't you tell us what you've learned about English literature over the years? George Bernard Shaw responded with delight, wonderful. It's my favorite subject. How long do I have to speak for? And the host responded, 3-4 minutes. So George Bernard Shaw responded in horror, what? You want me to tell you what I've learned about English literature in 3 or 4 minutes? How can I possibly do that? And the host responded with a deadpan, speak slowly, George. So what we're going to be speaking about tonight, both subjects, the main one of raising kids to love being Jewish, stay Jewish and love it, and even the intermarriage connection, are subjects that I spent a lot of time on. I spent years researching and speaking about, so I can go on for hours and hours. On the other hand, I could summarize it in 1 or 2 sentences, and neither of which are going to be particularly helpful. So what I'm going to try and do is get kind of the Maimonides' golden mean, and share the main principles. And as we go along, I'm going to make sure to leave lots of time for questions and comments, and we can pick up on what you're most interested in and sort of develop that more. reminded of a story of this lady who's sitting on a park bench enjoying the summer warmth, and another lady, similar age, sits down beside her. They get to talking, and her new friend says, so tell me, you mentioned you have kids, but how old are they? You haven't mentioned how old your kids are. So the first lady responds, well, the lawyer is 3 and the doctor is 5. There's a lot of things we want for our kids. We have all kinds of hopes for them. Some are our own hopes that we never really fulfilled. Some are things we want for our kids because we think it'd be great for them. One of the things that Jews want most is for their kids to stay Jewish. It's an unbelievable reality that I see. I meet Jewish parents all over the world that care more about their kids' Jewishness than their own Jewishness. See if you recognize this conversation. Dad, I hate Hebrew school. I don't want to go. And the father responds, so what? I also hated Hebrew school. You're going. Where's the logic, right? Not this Hebrew school, Rabbi, I'm sure not. But it's funny. We want our kids to stay Jewish. And the reality is that through most of Jewish history, you didn't have to do much to keep your kids Jewish. I'm born in Montreal, Canada. That's where my parents are actually born. But my grandparents come from Russia. We come from a town in Russia where the Jews spoke Yiddish and did not speak Russian, and the Russians spoke Russian and did not speak Yiddish for 700 years. Through most of Jewish history, there were certain periods that were exceptions. But through most of Jewish history, we had a different culture, language, religion. We were quite separate from the people around us. We were knowledgeable, proud about who we were. We didn't really want to be like the non-Jews, and they certainly didn't want to have much to do with us. So you didn't have to do much to keep your kids Jewish. It was automatic. You could be a lousy Jewish parent, and your kids stayed Jewish automatically. Where were they going to go? 99.9% of them stayed Jewish. Well, it's not like that today. Things have changed radically. Does anybody know how many Jews there are in the United States today? 2008. Very good. I am impressed. The official number from the 2001 National Jewish Population Survey, which is the main Federation survey, multi-million-dollar census that's done every 10 years, from 2001, the official number is 5.2 million. This is all available online, njps.org. Some criticized that and said that actually there should be 5.5. So let's take the optimistic number. The most optimistic mainstream number of Jews in America is 5.5 million. Now, I don't know, judging from the age of the crowd, I'm sure you recognize what I'm going to tell you. That wasn't always the number I heard growing up. When I was growing up, what number did they always say? 6. It was this eerie coincidence. You had 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, and you had 6 million Jews in the United States. It was true for the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s into the 80s. That was the number. It was easy to remember. So it's gone down to 5.5 in one generation. Now, to make matters worse, has anybody noticed any new Jewish immigrants coming to the United States in the last 25 years? Anybody move here? Any Jews moved to the States in the last 25 years?
Israelis.
About 10 billion of them. I'm just kidding, I'm Israeli, I can say it. But estimates range, I'm not talking about the Israelis who come for a year or two to work, whatever, but estimates are that at least 1 million permanent American Jews are Israelis or children of Israelis. Some say it's already 1.5 million, meaning it's almost 20% of the Jewish population is Israeli. That's at least 1 million new Jewish immigrants from Israel alone. Any other countries that have sent immigrants here in the last 25 years? 350,000 Russian Jews have come in the last 25 years. Anyone else? Almost 100,000 Persian Jews have come. Anybody else? Canadians. What? Canadians only? There's a few of us. There's a few of us. What? Anyone else? Argentina, Venezuela, Colombia have sent together over 50,000 Jews. As there have been different problems in those countries, most of the Jews have come to here, come to the States. One other main country, South Africa. Something like 30,000. Most South African Jews went to Australia, Israel, or Canada, but there have been about 30,000 coming to the States by most estimates. If you add it up, a conservative number is 1.5 million new Jews coming to the States in one generation. Now think about that. 30 years ago, 25 years ago, we were 6 million Jews. We've had at least 1.5 million Jewish immigrants. We just added it up. It's probably even higher, but we just added up a conservative number. That means we should be 7.5 million. And how many are we? At most 5.5 million. In one generation, we have gone down 2 million Jews. One generation. Thank God, no holocausts, no pogroms. Unfortunately, no mass aliyah. They didn't go back to Israel. Very few American Jews have made aliyah, unfortunately. So where did the 2 million Jews go? Well, it's very simple. Staying Jewish today is not automatic. If we are not better Jewish parents and grandparents than our parents and grandparents were, it's not going to work. If we do what our parents did, our kids will not stay Jewish. It's that simple. We're living in a society that is much more attractive, much more open, much more free. So we have to be better Jewish parents than anyone in recent generations. Because the dangers, the risks, the attractiveness is much, much greater. So what I'm going to try and do is share with you some of what I've been researching and writing about and consulting and teaching in the last number of years on what the main principles are. Someone can easily tell you that, oh yeah, just be more Jewish and your kids will stay more Jewish. Well, there's some truth to that and there's a lot of falsehood to that as well, because it depends what that means. So I'm going to try and share with you some of the principles, and then we'll move on, as we get into more questions and comments of which direction you want to go. First principle, first secret of great Jewish families. I remember, let's start like this. My family growing up did a lot of things religiously. One of the things we did religiously was to watch 60 Minutes on Sunday nights, CBS News. On the West Coast, what time is it on? 7. It's the same thing. So it's on East Coast, it's 7 o'clock p.m. It's still on today, I assume, right? It was on, okay. So it's been on for at least 30 years because I was growing up with it. And my parents very much thought that, that my two brothers, that we should be knowledgeable of what's going on in the world. So this was there, once a week, you sit down, you watch the major news events, find out what's going on. So I'm sure you've all seen the show. The stopwatch comes on at the beginning, ticks a little bit, they announce the main stories, then they go to commercial break, they have 3 or 4 main stories, then there's Andy Rooney at the end saying something stupid about the post office, whatever, they go through. That's the story. I must have seen hundreds of them growing up. And there's one I remember. And I remember this from 1984. Anybody know what was happening politically in America in 1984? What? The Olympics, I mean politically. Ronald Reagan's re-election campaign, right? Ronald Reagan was president in the first days, and then his re-election campaign is in 1984. So I want to tell you a little story about his re-election campaign. Please don't get distracted. If you liked Reagan, you don't like Reagan, that's not the point. Diane Sawyer did a story on 60 Minutes about his re-election campaign. In the middle of the re-election campaign, the images that she used were as follows. She showed pictures of Ronald Reagan shaking hands with African Americans, holding up a little Chinese kid, all different pictures of him with different ethnic minorities. But the audio, the text that she used, she dubbed it, was actually he got the lowest African American vote in recent history. They all think he's racist. Minorities don't like him. The video then changed. And the video was him in Detroit in a car factory churning out cars, and him in McDonald's flipping hamburgers. Went on all the images of, America at work. But the audio was, actually the gap between the rich and poor is bigger than ever, and the trickle-down theory is not trickling down, etc., etc. Went on for over 8 minutes in television time, which is a lifetime. The images were images from Reagan's re-election campaign. That's where they were taken from. But the audio was Diane Sawyer saying, actually, this is inaccurate, and this is inaccurate, and this is just not true, and this is not true. So this airs on a Sunday night, and Diane Sawyer, she told the story a couple weeks later, I saw her tell the story, that the Monday morning after the report, she's waiting in her office for the phone call. What do you expect? What did she expect? She expected to get a call from the White House press secretary. I think his name was Fitzwater at the time, Marlon Fitzwater. So she was expecting to get a call from the press secretary saying, Diane, you're not a journalist, you're a Democrat, you can do that to any politician, we're going to get you, you're never going to set foot in the White House again, your White House press pass is going to be revoked. The secretary puts through the call. I assume maybe she holds the receiver far, and if somebody's going to yell at you, you hold the receiver a little far from your ears. And the White House press secretary says, Diane, we're just calling to thank you for the report last night. And she said, what? He said, well, the 60 Minutes report, we're calling to thank you. And she said, did you see it? He said, of course we saw it. She said, why are you thanking me? I destroyed you. And he started to laugh on the phone. And these are my words, but the gist is 100% true. I remember it from 24 years ago. She said, the press secretary said to her, Diane, you are one of the most famous, respected journalists in the world today, and you don't understand your own medium. It's television. People watch television. They're viewers. You gave us $25 million worth of primetime images. No one heard a word you said. And she went on the air a couple weeks later to tell how this it had really shocked her and affected her to make her think about her own profession. And it stuck with her, and it stuck with me for a long time. We think that what we tell our children is important. And I suppose it is. But you know what? What they see is what affects them. The main thing is what they see. I was walking we live in a place called the Beit Shemesh area of Israel, and try to take my kids around the country, different holidays when they have breaks from school. So this past Sukkot, on Sukkot time, the intermediate days, the Cholamot, the middle days of Sukkot, they're off from school. We take them on day trips in different places. So we went to a place in northern Tel Aviv. There's like a big park. It's kind of the equivalent of Tel Aviv's Central Park. Obviously smaller scale, but still very nice. Artificial lake, you rent boats, there's pedal boats, Gana Yeshua, if people know what it is. So to get there, we take the train. My kids love taking the train as much as they love actually going to the park. So we're taking the train, and this is 5 months ago. And as we're walking in the train station, my 6-year-old boy says, "Abba, Dad, this is where you help the blind man." I had no idea what he was talking about. I said, what? What did you say? He said, "This is where you help the blind man." Remember, he was standing over there and he was looking a little troubled. So you went up and talked to him and he put his hand on your shoulder and you walked him over there. I had no idea what the kid was talking about. So I turned to my wife with her all-knowing smile, because she usually knows what's going on. And she smiled and she said, 3 years ago. And then I said, oh. The last time we were in that train station was 3 years before, when my then 3-year-old son remembered that there was a blind man standing there. I hadn't actually noticed him, but my wife had elbowed me, And, we'd gone, and he was the whole thing took 30 seconds. He didn't know where to go, so I just went to help him. I walked him over to the other side. It was start to finish 30 seconds. My 3-year-old son remembered this 3 years later. What children see affects them. What they hear, only a small, small influence. What this means is, we, as parents and grandparents, need to be role models. You can tell your kid 1,000 times, it's important to be Jewish, words. If they see you doing Jewish things, it makes an impression, and that's what stays with them. This does not mean we need to be perfect parents. None of us are. It does mean they need to see us putting in efforts to do Jewish things. Coming here in the evening to study is amazing. It's wonderful. I applaud you for coming. I encourage you to come back. One thing I want to mention, though. At some point, your kids have to see you studying as well. I had this problem. As you can imagine, I'm a speaker and a teacher, so I spend quite a bit of time with books open in front of me, researching, And I noticed that my kids actually never saw me studying anything Jewish, because they were away to school during the day when I was doing most of what I was doing. So I started was what I do now. On Saturday afternoon, Shabbat afternoon, I will sit at my dining room table, and I will open whatever book I'm studying, and I'll stare at the same page for about 2 hours. Because, thank God, I'm blessed with a bunch of little kids. Dad, can you tie my shoes? Drink of water, this, help me read my book, screaming, whatever. So why do I do it? I don't get anything done. Why do I do it? Because once a week, I want to let them see me studying something Jewish. My wife, when she lights candles before Shabbat on Friday afternoon, she has to deal with the kids. If the kids are ready and are there, they watch her, they get a treat when she lights candles. So they're growing up looking forward to watching their mother light candles. I don't have any doubts my kids are going to be lighting candles. God willing, but we see the impression. What our kids see affects them. This means that as much as what we do personally, Jewishly, is important, in order to affect our children, we need to make it visible. Don't hide it. When a person gives tzedakah, gives charity, hopefully to a wonderful place like this. That was a free plug. The rabbi didn't ask for it. So there's a wonderful thing about not putting your name or giving charity anonymously. That's wonderful for the Jewish community. It's wonderful for your own humility. It's not good for your kids. Let your kids see you writing out the check, giving the money. Let them see them. Let your kids see you doing Jewish things. The more they see, the more it affects them. This also means that our houses should look Jewish. What they see affects them. Every Jewish house should have mezuzahs, should have pictures from Israel, should have a Jewish calendar. It doesn't have to look like a library. My house doesn't look like a library. But it should have a Jewish feel. If they grow up with it, they see it that way, it's going to affect them. That's the first principle of raising Jewish kids to stay Jewish and to love being Jewish, is to have them see things, to be role models for them. Second principle. There's a story in the Torah that I'm sure you will recognize. The story is that when Joseph goes down, he's sold into slavery, he rises up from prison to be second in charge of Egypt, and eventually his brothers come down. Eventually they bring down even his full brother, Benjamin, to the youngest brother. And he, still pretending to be Egyptian, he wants Benjamin to stay in Egypt. And the brothers say no. Benjamin can't stay here in Egypt, he has to go back north to Israel. Does anybody remember what the excuse is? Why does Benjamin have to go north to Israel? Excellent. He said he's an old father who loves him, whose soul is bound up with him. He can't bear to be parted. Now, from the sound of this, it sounds like Benjamin is a relatively young boy. Right? He has an old father who loves him. He can't separate him from his father. So Benjamin, at the time, when you add up all the ages in the Torah, Benjamin was 37 years old. And get this, he had a wife and 10 kids. Any lawyers in the crowd right now? Is this a Jewish crowd, Rabbi? There's not one lawyer? Oh, wait. How many doctors are there in the crowd? Okay. So, imagine you're a lawyer arguing for mercy. There's a nice guy named Benjamin who might be sent away to the slammer, and you have to go to the judge and ask for mercy. Which would you say? Please, judge, he has an old father who loves him. Or would you say, please, judge, he has a wife and 10 kids? It's obvious, right? So why did the brothers neglect to mention the very thing that's the most powerful argument? Why did they mention the father, Benjamin's father would miss him, and not mention that Benjamin's own kids would miss him? Kotzker Rebbe, famous Hasidic master, asked this question, and he gave a beautiful answer. The first time I heard the answer, I was shocked. So, I don't know if you'll be shocked, but when you think about it, I think it's so true. The Kotzker Rebbe explained that parents love their children more than children love their parents. It's unbelievable. Parents love their children more than children love their parents. Of course our children love us, and of course we love our parents, we loved our parents, but it almost never compares. Why? Well, it's actually very simple. Parents give to their kids constantly. For a woman from the time she's expecting, for both parents from the time of birth, it's up all night with feedings and changings, and it's physically giving day in, day out. You're just constantly giving to the child. When the kid gets a little more stable, physically more independent, so then it's all the emotional giving. Late 6, 7, 8, into the teen years, emotional giving, time and attention, giving. We constantly give to our kids. Finally, they're in their 20s, we think it's over, and they're still asking for money. They're in their 30s, and they're still asking for money. We give, and we give, and we give to our kids. Anybody know what the Hebrew word is for love? Ahava, right? Most people. I'm sure the ladies know it from the creams, right? What does ahava mean? I know, don't say it means love. I know it means love. The root of the word. Anybody know what the root of the word is? Hav. Hav means to give. That's what the word means. The closest thing you might recognize is from the song, Hava, Nagila, Hava, bring, have, to bring, to give. What this means is, loving comes from giving. Whatever you give to, you come to care about and love. An example. I don't know how many people have been whale watching. I actually like whale watching. I'm a big fan of whales. I've only been a couple times, but I hope they'll go again. Beautiful creatures, majestic and unbelievable creatures. I actually was in South Africa recently, and there's a place in South Africa you can watch whales from the coast. You stand there and watch dozens of whales. It's incredible. So whales are beautiful creatures. I'm glad that there are organizations protecting the whales. But if you were to ask me, on my top list of things that are important in my life, where does Save the Whales figure? Not in the top 10. Not in the top 25. I mean, probably not in the top 100. I mean, I'm glad other people are doing it, but in my mind, there's a lot more important things, and any human being is more important than a whale. So, now, if I were to spend the next 12 months working nonstop for Save the Whales, chaining myself to fences, sending fax machines, riding on Greenpeace boats, giving my time, my sleep, my money to save the whales, how would I feel about them in 12 months? Oh boy, would I care. What you put efforts into develops your feelings. This is why, by the way, the Kotzker Rebbe explained, why do parents love their kids more? Because they give more to their kids. Kids are on the receiving end. So our kids' feelings never really develop as much. If we're lucky enough as we get older to be able to take care of our parents, we get to pay back a little bit. But it never really adds up. This is why the brothers argued on behalf of Benjamin. That Benjamin's father would miss him even more than his kids, believe it or not, because the father had given so much, he cared so much. This is the second principle of raising Jewish kids. The first one, we have to be role models. They have to see us living Jewishly. The second principle, what they do will develop their feelings. If it's all us, if we are the active ones in Jewish life, and the kids never do anything, they're not going to have any real feelings for it. And when they get a little older and they go to college and they move out, it was never them. It was always you. So it's not going to last. So we have to find ways of getting them active in their Jewishness. Now, I say this with great pleasure because the opportunities here are obvious. Just hearing and seeing what this, what the Jewish Academy at the Chabad Center here does is amazing. Friendship circle, getting kids active. I was here speaking to a group of teens before. That's the idea. Getting them active and doing Jewish things. Some people before Passover, cleaning your house to get ready for Passover. So you and I both know that it's much easier to get the kids out of the house for a day and clean the house. It's much easier. You can do it much quicker. But it's a mistake. It's a mistake. Because if we do this year in, year out, and Fridays also, and they're never preparing for the holidays in any way, it's not their holiday. They're just passive recipients of it. So I'm not suggesting slave labor. You have to be wise and figure out what they can do, what they will do, what they like doing. But they have to be active. Some kids like cooking. Some kids hate cooking. Some kids like cleaning. Some kids hate cooking. Some kids like making decorations. Whatever. But if they're active in what they're doing, if they're active in their Jewishness, it's their Jewishness. It's not yours. Obviously, the main point in getting them active is going to be education. The more they are actively learning about Jewish things, the more Jewish they stay. Now, we have a problem in America, and this problem is best summarized by a story about a priest. A priest and a rabbi are taking a walk. The priest is complaining about mice in his church, and the rabbi doesn't say anything. So the priest says to the rabbi, "Rabbi, you ever had mice in your synagogue?" And the rabbi says, "Well, we used to have mice, but we got rid of them." And the priest says, "Please tell me, how'd you get rid of the mice?" And the rabbi says, "I don't think my solution is going to work for you." The priest says, "Please tell me anyway." So the rabbi says, "Well, one Saturday morning, we got all the mice together in synagogue and gave them bar and bat mitzvahs, and they never came back to shul." And it is so true. Bar bat mitzvah is supposed to be the time when people start their adult Jewish lives, when they have the intelligence and the independence and maturity to start really understanding Jewish ideas. All education before bar bat mitzvah is only a preparation for the stuff that's happening after. And what has it become in the States and most of the diaspora? The end of Jewish education. Which means that our younger generations, and even for our generations also sometimes, unfortunately, you stop Jewish education at 12, 13 years old, go on with high school and college, and suddenly people have a view of Judaism that is infantile. Because the last time they learned anything Jewishly was when they were 10, 12 years old. No wonder they don't want to be Jewish, because it was a bunch of Bible stories. It's crucial that getting our Jewish kids active and learning continues in the teen years. I saw a great example of it today. Risapo was running a great program for the kids. It's crucial, both in education, in activities. It can't stop at bar bat mitzvah. Now, obviously, it's trickier when they're teenagers. Obviously, it takes more wisdom in figuring how to do it and how to get the kid, but it has to be done. If education and a Jewish activity stops then, there's very little hope of what's going to happen in the future. Very, very small chance it's going to work. 2 principles so far of raising families, raising kids that are going to stay Jewish and be happy about it. A, role modeling. B, getting them active. There's a story that happened. I mentioned the story from 1984. Let's go back. 1963, Cuban Missile Crisis. Those who may remember or have read about it. This was the time that historians now tell us that the world was closer to nuclear war, God forbid, than any time before or since. Castro took over Cuba, allied himself with the Soviet Union, which was a very aggressive communist dictatorship, pushing as much as they could at the time. And they started to send down nuclear missile emplacements into Cuba. Cuba is very close to the coast of Florida. The danger to America was great. CIA brought pictures from spy planes to John F. Kennedy, showed him the evidence, and John F. Kennedy realized that he had to stand up and stop this. He couldn't let it happen. It's too dangerous. So he stood up to the Russians, blockaded Cuba, threatened nuclear war if they did not withdraw, and thank God, we're here to talk about it, the Russians backed down. They disassembled the missile emplacements. We're here to tell the story. Life went on happily ever after. During that crisis, Americans were told that they would have a 12-minute warning if the Russians launched the first strike. And this was going to be the end of life as we know it, God forbid. So for those couple of weeks that the Cuban Missile Crisis went on, people were renting their bunkers, they were worrying about the end of life. It was a tremendously tense time. There was a man, I'll call him Tim, who was an alcoholic. He was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He'd actually been sober for over 10 years, a very impressive feat. Alcoholism is a disease, it's not simple. He'd been sober for over 10 years. And the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings had been canceled during the Cuban Missile Crisis. But after it was over and everything was back to normal, he went to his first meeting. And when he went to the meeting, he was joking around with his friends, and he said, "Boy, if I thought that I would only have 12 minutes left to live, boy, would I have a drink." Everybody smiled and laughed. A young man who later became a well-known psychiatrist and rabbi, Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky, founder of the Gateways Institute in Pittsburgh, a big author, he was a young man interning at this meeting at the time. And he later commented and said something very, very wise. He said, "This person, Tim, deserves our utmost respect. He conquered a disease. He stayed sober for over 10 years. I don't know what motivated him, whether it was to save his marriage, to save his kids, to save his job, his health, whatever it was, he did it. A lot of people could not do that. And yet, when Tim thought that he only had a few minutes left to live in the world, one thing he could do in the rest of his life, one meaningful, positive, enjoyable thing, he did not think of hugging his wife. He did not think of holding his kids. He did not think of watching the sunset. When he thought, intuitively, to do one enjoyable thing, one meaningful, one good thing, he thought of drinking. At a certain level, deep down, he was still very alcoholic because he didn't connect happiness with sobriety. He was sober out of loyalty, out of obligation, but what he really wanted to enjoy was drinking. He had lived a sober life for over 10 years, but didn't really enjoy it. I meet people like Tim on a constant basis. Not necessarily alcoholics, but Jews. There are too many Jews who lead committed Jewish lives and don't really enjoy it. Just like Tim keeping sober out of obligation but not really enjoying it, too many Jews stay Jewish out of obligation. We do it out of history, we do it out of guilt, we do it out of intellect, but do we actually find Judaism enjoyable? Too many Jews don't. Well, I don't know about you, but I have a to-do list. My to-do list has a lot of different things on it. Professional things, personal things. But I've noticed there's really two kinds of things. There's the to-do list things that change because I'm doing certain things and crossing them off the list and adding new things. And there's the things that have been on my to-do list for years. What's the difference? I once thought about it, and I realized, you know what the commonality is? The things that I like doing, I do. And the things that I don't like doing, I somehow manage to avoid. We are like this. Human beings are based on enjoying and play. We avoid things we don't like to do, and we do things we do want to do. So if we are raising our children that Judaism is an obligation, it is history, it is Holocaust, they're not going to enjoy it. And they're not going to do it. They're going to run away from it, which is what they are doing. This third principle of Jewish life is perhaps the most important. Making Jewish life enjoyable and fun. I call this the Yom Kippur syndrome. Now, I want to make clear, I don't want to take anything away from Yom Kippur. Day of Atonement is the holiest day of the year, the Holy of Holies. But let's think about something. What percentage of Jews keep Yom Kippur in some way? What do you think? Upwards of 85% keep it in some way. Some with a full traditional fast, but most Jews keep Yom Kippur in some way. Yom Kippur is an enjoyable day or kind of a hard day? Well, at a deep level, it's actually incredibly enjoyable to have one's sins cleansed, but that's, for most people, day to day, it's a relatively hard, solemn, obligatory day. Most people keep it in some way. 5 days after Yom Kippur is Sukkot. How many days is Sukkot? 8 days. What is the theme of Sukkot? Happiness. V'samachta b'chagecha. Enjoy your holiday. It's an 8-day party of singing, dancing, food, friends. It's a wonderful... What percentage of Jews celebrate Sukkot? 10, 12. This is... You see the tragedy? We see Judaism through Yom Kippur eyes. Kids grow up, and families and adults, and Judaism seems serious and solemn, and its responsibility, and all that is true. That's one part of the picture. But the other part of the picture is that it's joyous and it's fun. Dancing on Simchat Torah is one of the most incredible things. In a couple of weeks we have Purim, one of the most fun, incredible holidays there is. Friday night dinners, done correctly, are the highlight for any age. They are beautiful, enjoyable, happy, and yet so few Jews know about them. So when we bring up our children, if we're bringing up our children with all of the serious side, and we're not emphasizing the happy, enjoyable side, we're losing. Kids have to experience much more of the joy than the serious side. As they get older, they can get into the serious side, and a little bit when they're young. But it has to be enjoyable and fun and happy. This means that it has to be fun for the age, appropriate for the age. Singing, dancing. Rabbi was once, after services on a Saturday morning, he's walking in the hallway of the shul, and he notices a little boy, 4 or 5 years old, who's staring up at a plaque on the wall, and he notices that the boy's looking a little confused. So he says, son, is everything okay? And the boy says to the rabbi, Rabbi, what is this? And the rabbi looks and he says, well, son, that's a memorial plaque. And the boy doesn't really understand. So he says, Rabbi, what is that? And the rabbi says, well, son, this is a list of all the names of the members of our congregation that died in the service. And the boy looks up at the rabbi very scared and says, which one? Friday night or Saturday morning? Shul has to be an enjoyable experience. One of the great things about Chabad shuls, and I am not personally a Lubavitch Chassid, I'm a great fan, I'm very close to them, but one of the great things is that they know how to make shul good for kids. It has to be. If kids are brought in to an adult service and told to sit there for 2 hours and be quiet, you're killing your kid. They're going to hate prayer, hate synagogue. It can't happen. We have to make sure that Jewish life is fun and exciting. Services are. It's got to be positive. If it's positive, they'll want it. If it's not positive, they won't. Many Jews, by the way, even those who leave Jewish connection for a number of years, what brings them back is warm, happy childhood memories. That's what keeps them connected. We have to give them those memories. 3 principles we've seen so far. Being role models, having them see us living Jewish lives. You don't have to be perfect, but they have to see us putting in efforts. Number 2, from the Benjamin story, what a person invests in, they come to care about. which is why we have to get our kids invested in their own Jewish lives. Get them involved in activities, get them involved in education. What they do, they're going to come to care about. Third principle, perhaps the most important, is the joy aspect. It has to be positive. We have to honestly ask ourselves, do my kids enjoy being Jewish? If they don't, we need to change. And we have to ask an even deeper question. Do I enjoy being Jewish? And if I don't, I won't be able to do it to my kids, which means I have to find ways in. Classes are a wonderful thing, being turned on to Jewish learning, turned on to Jewish prayer, getting into the holidays. Each of us has to find a way in that is enjoyable to us. And by doing so, we can help give that positive attitude towards our children. Next. Number 4. A number of years ago, I'm going back about 15 years, I was planning on making Aliyah. I'm from Montreal, my parents are in Montreal. I was planning on making Aliyah to Israel. And my parents, although they're very committed Jews and very committed Zionists, their attitude was, well, why don't you let somebody else's kid make Aliyah? Israel's far. So they made me a deal. The deal was, look, you haven't seen most of North America. Why don't you spend a few months on the road, we'll buy you a used car, travel around, see if you can find a place that you want to live, a Jewish community you want to be in, a city you want to be in. They were hoping that I'd find someplace a little closer. So I'm not stupid, and it was a free trip. So I went. I knew I was going to make Aliyah, there's no question. But, I went. I left Montreal in, I think it was about January, and I returned in June. Spent those 5 months on the road. I basically did a tour. I went all the way south towards Florida, across the south, up through California. I actually got a cheap ticket to Hawaii from LA. And I figured, when am I ever going to be able to see Hawaii? So I went to Hawaii. And I went up back to Vancouver, all the way back through Mount Rushmore, back home. It was an amazing trip. I was supposed to spend Passover with friends here in Los Angeles. And I was running behind schedule. It was a couple days before Passover. I was in the Southwest. I was in southern New Mexico doing some hiking in the hills. There's beautiful old mountains and beautiful old pueblos. The oldest habitations of America are actually there. Old Indian pueblos, about 1,000 years old. Where I live now in Israel, a 1,000-year-old building, you don't even need a permit to knock it down. I was like, 1,000 years. But here, 1,000 years. Yeah. So I was it was 2 days before Passover, and I was thinking maybe I'll change plans. I wanted to do some more hiking. I wanted to see some of the national parks. I wanted to see Vegas, So I figured maybe I can change plans. So I decided that the next morning I would drive into the local Jewish metropolis, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and see what happens. Now, if you are somewhere far from home and you want a Jewish connection, what do? Call Chabad, right? So I once heard the chief rabbi of the British Commonwealth of the UK, Jonathan Sachs, I once heard him speak, and he told a story that he was on his honeymoon in Switzerland, hiking in the Alps, and he and his wife went off the trail, and they got lost in the Alps on their honeymoon. And they're getting a little nervous, and Jonathan Sachs starts to sing Lubavitch Nigunim, Lubavitch songs. And his wife looks at him like he's crazy. And she says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm singing Chabad songs." And she said, "Why?" And he said, "Because wherever there's a lost Jew, Chabad will find you. And I want them to know where I am." It is an incredible, incredible feeling to connect up with Jews around the world. My whole life, I always heard that all Jews are connected to each other. We're one big family. It was all theory until then. It was never real. Suddenly, I was in a place, and I could connect up, and I was invited for a wonderful Passover. It was really, in a sense, it was really the best Passover of my life. Don't tell my wife I said that. But because just that feeling was amazing. I could show up and be welcome. And it's true not just on the holidays, it's true for Shabbat, it's true during the week. Jewish connections everywhere. We know, those of us who spend most of our lives, or a good part of our lives outside of Israel, grew up here, live here, we know how much we care about what happens to Israel. I don't know about you, but the first thing I look on in the news, we're very concerned. This is a big part of who I am. When there was all the problems in the Argentinian economy, Jews sent political and economic help. You now hear Spanish on the streets of Jerusalem. when the Russian Jews were virtually imprisoned, couldn't do anything Jewish with the KGB following them. It was American Jews that put on political pressure that got the Jews out of Russia. I mean, we are connected to all Jews around the world, and it's an incredible feeling. And it's not only all Jews today. Zabriskie talked about the power of memory. That's exactly where I'm going. The power of memory. Think about it. What is my connection to my great-great-great-grandfather? Well, let's think about it genetically. So half of me is my father, right? Physical genes. A quarter of me is my grandfather. An eighth of me is my great-grandfather. 1/16 is my great-great-grandfather. 1/32 is my great-great-great-grandfather, right? 1 out of 32 parts. Is that the connection with this individual? Go back one more generation and it's less than 1%. Furthermore, many of us have converts in our families. So the blood it's not the same blood anyway. Is that what being Jewish is? That's what connects me to my ancestors' blood? No way. That's not that. Look how little it works out to be. What connects me to my ancestors is my Jewishness. If my great-great-grandparents were to walk into my home, true, there would be many things they'd find very strange. There's many things I find very strange. But there'd be a lot of things that they would really connect with, and they would feel at home. They would see the candlesticks for Shabbat. They would see mezuzah. They would see a painting of Israel. There were things that's my connection to these people. And what is my connection to my descendants? Same thing. Anybody here been to the Diaspora Museum in Tel Aviv? Beit HaTfutzot. It's one of the tourist sites. It's a very interesting museum in the grounds of Tel Aviv University. I want to describe for you one of the exhibits. On the first floor, as you walk in, it is a sort of a table that has a small white mold. I'm going to describe the scene. You tell me when you guess what it is. Dining room table. At one end of the table, a father figure, medieval garb, leaning back with a scroll in his hand. Other end of the table, mother figure, same thing. Third side of the table, 2 children, 8, 10 years old, sitting and listening. Fourth side of the table, youngest child, standing on a stool, speaking as everybody listens. What's the scene? 4 questions. Passover night, Manishtana, 4 questions. Now that scene that they made is actually taken from a sketch from an ancient manuscript, an ancient Haggadah from Spain. I think it's 14th century Spain. I don't know about you, but I've actually never been to Spain. I don't speak Spanish. Different culture, different continent, different everything. So how do I recognize that scene? Very simple. That's me. I did that growing up, and I'm doing that with my kids. This is what connects us. When a child grows up and they feel connected to all Jews around the world, past, present, and future, that promotes a very important sense of belonging and identity, and they're going to want their spouse to be part of that, and they're going to want their kids to be part of that. We have to give to our kids a strong sense of belonging to the Jewish community. Locally, by getting active in our shul, getting active in the Jewish community. Internationally, visiting Israel. When we travel, wherever we travel around the world, visiting the local Jewish communities. There are books on Jewish sites and going to kosher restaurants. There's a method to doing this. It's not hard. If we show interest in what's happening to Jews around the world, then our kids will hear this growing up. That's them. I do not want my kids to be Americans who, a couple times a year, they're Jewish. I want them to feel Jewish. They can also feel American. It's not a contradiction. But the Jewishness, they have to feel a connection to Jews everywhere. If they feel that the Jews are my people, they're going to want that to continue. Let's summarize the principles so far. Number 1, we have to be role models. Our kids have to see us doing Jewish things. Number 2, we have to get our kids active, because what they're active in, that'll affect their feelings, and they'll care about their Jewishness. Number 3, making it enjoyable. Number 4, creating a sense of belonging and community. Right? Having them feel part of something. Number 5. Maybe I can best express this with a story. Older Jewish couple, Sydney and Faggy, getting ready for lunch. Faggy's in the kitchen. She's cooking up some eggs for her husband, Sydney. He comes in, puts his head through the door of the kitchen, looks at what she's doing, and gets very agitated. Faggy, the fire's too high. Turn the fire down. Flip the eggs. Salt, you forgot salt. She looks at her husband and she says, Sidney, we've been married for 52 years. I've been making eggs for you for 52 years. What are you doing? So he smiles at his wife and he says, my dear Faggy, I just wanted you to know what it's like driving in a car with you all these years. People don't like being told what to do. It is human nature. We don't like being told what to do. The final principle of raising Jewish kids is learning to prioritize, to pick our battles. If we are the type of parents and grandparents that are trying to run our kids' lives, I want you to go to this college, study this subject, go to this grad school, live in this city, in this block, these friends. If I'm controlling my children's lives, if I'm trying to, well, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to rebel and not listen to me at all, or they're going to become wallflowers, not have independence, and not be real people. Which means that we need to pick our battles. Choose what is important. An example. There's only so many rules, only so many hats I can wear, rules I can fill. The things that I hope I'm somewhat successful in. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a teacher, and I write books. I mean, I wish I could do those 4 roles successfully. But the other stuff, you come to my house, there's a list of things that I haven't done, house fixing stuff and this. There's only so many things a person can do successfully. So, if we, as parents and grandparents, have 25 things we want to do in the next 10 years, want to go back to school, get another degree, travel to the Far East, get a new car, renovate the house, and one of them is, I want to make sure my kids stay Jewish. Well, I have sad news for you. It's probably not going to happen. This needs to be one of the priorities. I want to make sure my family is physically healthy. I want to have basic financial security, career path, and I want to make sure my kids stay Jewish. If my kids' Jewishness is one of my top priorities, one of the top 3 or 4 things in my life, I will make it happen. And it must be that priority. Remember we talked about at the beginning with the declining, dwindling Jewish population? This is what happens. It needs to be the priority. So, let's summarize, and then we'll have questions and comments and move on into some other ideas. We started out talking about the challenge today. If we continue doing what our parents and grandparents did, although what they did may have been great, in the modern world, it doesn't work. Things are too open, things are too easy. Being Jewish is a choice amongst many choices. There is a powerful social consciousness online and web and in television, everything. So we need to be more active. What do we need to do? I've outlined 5 principles. We can talk about any of these more in detail if you want. Being role models, number 1. Getting the kids active, number 2. Making it all enjoyable, number 3. Sense of belonging, 4. And number 5, prioritizing, choosing our battles. This is what's important. The 2 ladies meet in a park. It's a different park story, not the one from the beginning. And they haven't seen each other in a long time. Many, many years. And one woman says to the other, by the way, I don't know if I told you, but my daughter Barbara just got married. She just married a lawyer. And the other woman says, Mazel Tov, that's wonderful, I didn't know. And she says, wait a minute, Barbara, wasn't that the one that was married to the doctor? And the other one says, yeah, she was married to a doctor, now she's married to a lawyer. And the other woman says, wait a minute, wasn't that the one that was married to the banker? And she says, yeah, she was married to a banker, now she's married to then a doctor, then a lawyer. And her old friend responds with a smile, a banker, a doctor, and a lawyer? So much nachas from one child. When you meet older Jewish people, I'm not going to define the age of old. It is unbelievable that what they will tell you is that what gives them so much joy is seeing their Jewish grandchildren. One of the things that will make us happiest as we get older is if our kids stay Jewish. This is what means so much to us. Career is important and all. We do have the power. Do not believe that, my kid, they don't listen to their parents anyway, and, kids are kids today, and what can you do? It's not true. All of that is not true. Parents have an enormous amount of power if you play your cards right. If you have a good relationship with your children, and of course that is the premise and the building block of everything we've said. If you have a good, healthy relationship with your kids, you can influence them. You can have a big effect on them. There's no guarantees in life. You can do everything right and the kid will go off, but it's very rare. I am convinced that if a family does what I am suggesting on these principles, has a good relationship with your kids, give them education, give all the positive things we've talked about, you can increase your chances that your kids will stay Jewish drastically. In my experience, 95% of the time, someone who does this, it works. I can't say 100% because it's not true. But you can increase your chance to do everything that you have to do. I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for coming. Any questions on what we've talked about? Anybody want to share anything? Thank you. I know we wanted to move into older kids a little bit and talk about dealing with why marry Jewish. Anybody, before we get into that, anybody on what we've talked about so far have any questions, comments? Okay. So let's get into a short version of the intermarriage stuff. Rabbi, should I just start over and make believe it's 8 o'clock? It says that normally I do a whole evening on, I don't want it to go. What I'll try and do is I'll try and share some of the principles. Let me ask you the following question. Baby is born in the hospital. Good-looking child. Handsome, angelic, healthy. The mother is ecstatic. But then she has a second look at this child, and she screams in horror. Ah! Because the baby, although very good-looking, looks exactly like Rabbi Brisky. Comes out of the womb with a big beard, the kippah on the head, the most Jewish-looking baby you've ever seen in your life, doing Jewish things, morning, afternoon, and evening, birth till death. Very highly active Jewishly. Does a person like that marry out? No, right? It's obvious. People who are very religious in their own religions, they marry in the same religion, right? The people who intermarry are people who are not that observant. So what do you do about someone who is not that observant? How do you get them to marry somebody else in the same religion? Well, the first thing is that if you start early enough and you do everything I've suggested in the last hour, you will rarely have a problem. I can't say never, but 95% of the time it'll be fine. Because they're growing up, it's so much of a part of them. What about in the 5%? Or if, maybe you did well, you tried, but not everything works out as planned. And the kids are teenagers. The kids are in their 20s. What do you do? Well, here's a couple of ideas. Number one, we have to try to get the kids to want it themselves. Now, how do you go about this? I travel around. I'm on about 25, 30 campuses a year, speaking to students. I speak to teenagers, speak to 20, 30-somethings. And there is one main point. Obviously, I'm having to pick and choose from the whole, presentation, but there's one main point that I think affects people more than ever. What do you think people go through religiously in their lives? Meaning, imagine that you had a graph. Imagine you have a graph. This is the y-axis. This is the x-axis. This is what I call the religious and cultural timeline. Meaning how involved people are in their religion and culture as they get older. This is low involvement, medium involvement, high involvement, birth 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, all the way till death. Take an example. Let's take our Rabbi Brisky baby that we mentioned before. Highly involved, I said good looking. Highly involved the entire life. What's the line going to look like on the graph? Highly involved, highly involved, right? Horizontal high. Let's say a baby is born, Jewish child, but never knew they were Jewish, lives on a Pacific island, did nothing Jewish their entire lives. What's the line going to look like on the graph? Horizontal low. Let's say someone grows up in a religious family, but for whatever reasons, parents made mistakes, bad schooling, their own choices, they start dumping religion step by step. What's the line going to look like? The inverse. Final example, someone grows up in a family with little Jewish knowledge or practice. As they get older, they start incorporating more and more Jewish things into their life. What's the line going to look like? Everybody get the idea? Here's my question to you. In the modern world today, what do most people go through? Meaning, have a good day, it goes up. Have a bad hair day, it goes down. In the lottery, it goes up. When it goes down. Good day, it goes up. Bad day, it goes down. EKG model. That's option number 1. Anybody disagree? Anything different? Really? You all agree? What do you think?
It goes up until bar mitzvah.
Oh, it goes up to bar mitzvah and then crashes after. Right? That's the rabbi and the priest story that I told before. Option number 2. Right? Crashes after bar mitzvah.
When you marry a Jew,
Oh, well, it depends who you marry. Right? Okay, so it could go up after marriage. Very interesting. Anybody has 3 options so far. Anybody else?
Starts out low and increases when you're about to have your own children, and drops off again.
Very interesting. Goes up for kids and down. It's like a camel hump or something, right? Right? Very up like that. Option number 4. You had something? No?
I was going to say you're religious when you're young, and then you're not in your teenage years, and you become more when you get married and have your own kids. Then it trickles off, and when you get into your older age stage in life, you become more religious again.
A double camel hump. Goes up at the beginning, down, and then up again, and then down again. Very interesting. Option number 5. Wow, you guys are getting all the good options. Yes?
Well, the same option of assimilation, actually.
Most Jews grow up with little or nothing today, and most people are not deep, emotional, philosophical people. Most people just do whatever they grew up with, and they stay. That's option number 6. So I don't know what number we're at. Right? Another main option you should think, 2 main options you should think about, which I haven't seen yet. Anyone else? Okay, that's another version of that, which is, low to medium and sort of inertia stays where you are. A little bit higher, but good. That's option B.
But also, from them, I observe in home, kids can grow up.
Okay.
And by letting them drop.
True. I'm looking for overall. Yeah? The other 2 main options, you should maybe because we mentioned it before, religion is for kids, my parents forced it on me, I'm a modern person, and people just in the modern world, people just dump religion as they get older. That's a reasonable thing. We see people doing this. And the other option, the exact opposite. As people get older, they start to look for something more serious, meaning, spirituality. Everything you've described is true for some people. There are some people the single hump, there are some people double hump, there's the EKG model, there's, yours was the bar mitzvah, right? And then crash, right? So that's all true for some people. I want to share with you now what the paradigm looks like for the vast majority of people. Keep in mind this is true for Catholics, Protestants, Hindus, Baha'is. It's true for everybody. But I'm going to give Jewish examples. Almost all little Jewish boys on the 8th day of life have a Brit Milah, circumcision ceremony. Little girls have a Kiddush and Shul, Simchat Bat, whatever name is given to it. It's a ceremony welcoming a child into the Jewish community. Most Jewish kids today have some kind of Jewish education. Saturday morning, Sunday school, afternoon school, whatever it is. The parents who have not celebrated holidays for 20 years, suddenly there's little kids in the home. They go, buy a menorah, do Hanukkah, Passover Seder that had been at 5 minutes, let's get to the food. Suddenly they do a Passover Seder. Right? They want to give their kids some kind of holiday, some kind of identity, some kind of religion. Over 80% of Jews in most communities have a bar bat mitzvah at 12 or 13 years old. The vast majority of Jews in the West have a bar bat mitzvah program. In almost all cases, you don't just show up in synagogue and say, give me money. Like they actually do something, right? They have to go to a bar bat mitzvah program for 6 months or a year, 2 years, whatever it is, once or twice a week, going to synagogue, studying, learning, classes. That first period of life, birth till 12, 13, is relatively high. There's some holidays, some education, going to synagogue once or twice. It's relative. I know the parents forced it on them, but it's relatively high. Then, teenage years. I know a rabbi, a friend of mine, who started to give bar and bat mitzvahs an umbrella as a bar bat mitzvah present instead of a book. And they said, an umbrella? Why? He said, I want to give them something they're going to open. As we said before, after bar bat mitzvah, involvement plummets. On college campuses, you tell me, what percentage of Jewish students on a college campus are highly involved in their Jewishness? Let's even give a number to it. When they were 12 or 13 years old, 75, 80% were doing at least one Jewish thing a week. Right? When they are 7 years later, they're 19, 20, they're on campus, what percent are doing one Jewish event a week? I'll even make it easier. What percentage of Jewish students on campus are doing one Jewish event a month? What do you think? 10, 1, 2, 5? So it's interesting. As I mentioned, I'm on campuses a lot. Most of the time I'm speaking for Chabad Shluchim on campuses. Thank God there are over 100 of them now doing great things. If you add up on a college campus, who's going, for example, that's not the only example, but for example, who's doing a Friday night dinner at least once every few weeks, not even once a week? Who's going to the Friday night dinners? How many people are going? If you add up the Chabad family, there's usually the most popular place where they go and they get a wonderful Shabbat meal and all the kids are there. You add up the Hillel, you add up if there's a local rabbi, whatever it is. Usually those are the resources that are there. If you have 1,000 Jewish students on campus, roughly 100 will be going at all. 10%. Hillel did a survey on this and it turns out it's less than 10%. Meaning, within 7 years, the involvement plummets drastically. Out of all the decades of a person's life, 0 to 10, then the teenage years, then the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, which is the least religious decade of a person's life? 20s. This has been revealed in the studies, the research is clear, and we know it from our own experiences. The 20s are a time of independence, college, grad school, first job, traveling, fun. I'm not under my parents' wings anymore. I can do whatever I want. I'm not settled down yet. People are interested in religion, culture, heritage. First period of life, birth till early teens, well, moderate to high sometimes. Very high, but moderate to high. Second period, teens and 20s, religious and cultural involvement and attachment plummets. Then in the 30s, people start to get re-involved. Sometimes it skyrockets, sometimes slow, sometimes never, but usually it goes back up in the 30s. Why? Having children. Having children changes everything. I know a woman from Chicago, married somebody who wasn't Jewish, moved to a town where there were no Jews, did nothing Jewish for 10 years. No Rosh Hashanah, no Yom Kippur. Nobody in this town knew she was Jewish aside from her husband. She's holding her baby on the first day with her husband in the hospital room. One of the first things she says to her husband, I am raising this child to be a Jew. Surprise! I mean, very nice guy. Like, what? Like, you haven't mentioned being Jewish in 10 years. Well, the truth is, things change. And when you have a child, priorities change drastically. Most of the people in the room will recognize this. When you're alone, essentially everything's about me. When you have children, nothing's about me. It's all about the child. Suddenly I have to give the child something. What do I have to give them? Where do I come from? Suddenly I'm not alone. Suddenly I'm linking a chain. What's the chain? What am I passing on? People get re-involved because of their kids. That's the number one reason why people get re-involved. Why else do people get re-involved in their religion and culture in their 30s? Crisis. God forbid somebody loses a parent, dealing with sickness, death, dying. Brings people home. The Kaddish prayer, the mourning practices of Judaism have brought hundreds of thousands of Jews closer to their religion. Now that's the number two reason. Why else do people get re-involved in their 30s? I'll explain it in this way. It's the flip side of the 20s. The same reason why people in their 20s are not interested, want to have fun and explore. After a while, we've all been through this. Most people come to the conclusion, the parties were fun, but enough already. The traveling was interesting. I've been to 42 countries, but people settle down. People want something more. They're looking for meaning, spirituality. They mature. They get a little bit older. 3 distinct periods of life in a person's religious development. Typical person, not everybody, there are exceptions, but this is true for most people in most countries, most religions around the world. Starts mid to high, goes down in the teens and 20s, goes back high in the 30s. By the way, this is all the research is all there, but you can even know this from your own experience. Think about who you see in synagogues and temples. What demographic groups go to shul? You'll see kids until bar bat mitzvah, a year or two more. Then you'll see families. Try and find the 15 to 30-year-olds in shul. Good luck. So where do they come from in the 30s? Well, the same people who didn't go in their 20s start going in their 30s. This is the norm. This is true in all synagogues around the world. You have a gap. This means there are 3 distinct periods of religious involvement, religious cultural attachment involvement in a typical person's life. Starts mid to high, goes low, goes back high. Out of these 3 periods, when do we meet our spouses? First, second, or third? Isn't that ironic? We meet our spouses, we choose our marriage partners at what is religiously and culturally the single worst time to make that decision. People often tell me, why do you make such a big deal about interfaith marriage? We get along fine. She's a great girl. We've been living together for 2 years. We do Christmas once, Christmas once a year, Hanukkah once a year. Big deal. You know what my answer is? You're 22. You're 25. You're down here. I don't expect there to be any challenges. The challenges come when you get into a different stage of life. What this means is, even for someone who is not observant or particularly identified, who you marry matters because I am very likely to feel differently about my religion and culture as I get older. Once a person understands this principle, and I want to tell you that when I started out speaking to students, to college students, to 20-somethings, to teenagers, people said, well, but they're not interested. They don't know what's going to happen in the future, and it's not true. If explained in the way that I've explained it, in my experience, and from the people that I've spoken to, a tremendous amount of feedback on it, young people do understand this concept, and they can visualize that, yeah, I can see when I want to have kids, I'd like to, have this for them, and, I like to hear the shofar, I was little, I want to give that to my kids, and, Hanukkah. They do understand this. When a person understands that the religious involvement timeline, everything falls into place. Because then, the reasons for marrying in the same faith become very clear. They're all in detail in my book. I don't have time now to get into them in detail. I just want to give you the general approach. People who marry in the same religion have a much higher chance of having a happy marriage, of having a successful marriage. Statistically, just higher, it's a better chance of success. There are exceptions to that rule. There are Jews that divorce other Jews, etc., etc. But statistically, the chances are very high. Whether it is a Protestant marrying a Catholic or a Jew marrying a Christian, there's a lot more problems when there's two religions in one marriage. What religion the kids are going to be, what holidays we're going to celebrate. And we remember the timeline, that all the deals that were made during the engagements, forget those deals. They don't last 5 years. Because, well, wait a second. You get Rosh Hashanah, you get Passover, and I can't have a Christmas tree? I don't care what I said 10 years ago. That was my favorite holiday. It's my best memory growing up. Why do you get everything and I get nothing? Fair question, right? Things change. I was speaking in Milwaukee to a group of graduate students. A woman raised her hand. She was a little bit older than the crowd. She was in her 50s. She said the following. She said, I'm 54. I converted to Judaism 10 years ago. And she said, I don't regret it at all. It was a sincere conversion, and it took me a long time, and it was Shabbat, and it was kosher, and I'm happy with my decision. I don't regret it. She said, but it's very hard. I have 2 adult daughters who did not convert. They're in their 20s. She said, something happens in Israel, and I'm concerned and worried and looking at the news. It means nothing to my kids. The Jewish holidays are coming, and I'm looking forward to them, preparing for them. It means nothing to my kids. There is a central part of who I am that my own children cannot relate to. And then she turned to the students and she said, why would you want to marry someone who cannot understand a central part of who you are? The first reason to encourage people to marry in the same religion, no matter what it is, Catholics, Protestants, Hindus, Baha'is, it's better for the marriages. Practically speaking, fewer problems. At a deeper level, a much higher chance of unity, connectedness, full understanding. Second reason, almost every campus talk that I give, after the talk, a student will come up to me and will say as follows. I grew up, I had one parent who was Jewish, one parent who wasn't Jewish, and it was very hard, and I don't want to do that to my kids. All the books on intermarriage, and there are dozens of them, the biggest chapter is always the effect on the kids. It is tough growing up without a clear sense of identity. Well, I'm Jewish, but my siblings aren't Jewish. Or I'm half Jewish, and I'm half Christian. Or I'm Jewish, but one of the people I've loved most in my life, my mother, my father, is not Jewish. Very hard on a kid. Ask the kids themselves. In my experience, over 90% themselves will tell you it's very, very hard. I once had a woman come to a student talk in Colorado, and she said, I'm not Jewish at all, neither side. I came to talk with my Jewish friends because the subject interested me. I had one parent who was Protestant, one parent who was Catholic, and I'm not doing that to my kids. It was terrible. That's the second reason. Better for the kids. Third reason. Simple stats. When you marry someone this is the first two are universal, by the way. Notice, better for the marriage, better for the kids. Nothing to do with being Jewish. That's what's beautiful about them, is that they sound and they are universally applied to everybody. The statistics are from actually non-Jews, but it's been verified for us as well. But the final point is specifically Jewish. If I marry someone Jewish, I have a very high likelihood my family will stay Jewish. If I marry somebody who's not Jewish, Very small chance. And this is not my statistics. This is National Jewish Population Surveys from 71, 91, 2001. American Jewish Committee reports. Dr. Silverback Fishman from Brandeis University did a major study a couple of years ago in her book Double or Nothing. Most recently, Dr. Stephen Cohn, who was affiliated with the Hebrew Union College and Hebrew University in Jerusalem, released a major study. You can find this online on the jta.org, Jewish Telegraph Agency. He called this study two Jewries, meaning two Jewish peoples. And what he said was that what was historically always one Jewish people is now dividing into two. The first Jewish people celebrates most of the holidays, visits Israel sometime during their lives, says that many or most of their friends are Jewish. The second group of Jewish people is very different. Only 7% say that most of their friends are Jewish. They generally don't visit Israel, generally don't celebrate the holidays. You know what the difference is between these two groups? First group, the in-marrieds. Second group, the intermarrieds. I don't want to tell you that an intermarriage always results in the lack of Jewishness. It's not true. Some intermarriages, the kids stay Jewish, and I'm delighted when it happens, and when they're Jewish, great, we should try to make it happen. But the reality is that in less than 10% of the cases will the children stay Jewish. I think it's personally about 5%. That I can't prove to you. But I can prove it's less than 10. All the statistics show that. 3 reasons for us to understand why it's important to marry in the same religion, and for us to be able to tell our children and our grandchildren. Better for the marriage, better for the kids, much better for the Jewishness. Now, it all depends how this is done. If they are willing to listen, if we have a good relationship with them, the point can be, this is what I do, and you see it can work. There is one other card that I want to play with, that I want to give you to play and to have in your back pocket. Even if they themselves are not motivated, there is a very powerful tool that parents have, and this is how it goes. If you have a good relationship with your children, there is love, there is care, there is communication, there is trust, there is respect, and you ask one thing of them, it's very hard to say no. What I suggest to parents is that they make it clear, look, I hope you're going to live down the street from me so I can visit every day. But I understand you may live in a different city, a different country, a different continent, whatever. I hope you'll, get into this profession, make a good living, but I hope you decide everything. You decide where you're going to live, you decide what car, what house, what job. There's one thing I ask, that you marry someone fully Jewish. It's the only thing I ask of you. And I demand it because it's not just about you, it's about me as well. If you have a good relationship with your children, and this is the only thing you ask of them, very likely they're going to listen. Now, when I'm speaking to groups in a place like Wichita, Kansas, which I haven't done, but it's a good example, it's much harder. If you're in LA, there's a lot of Jews around. So if we get our kids active, they have to see, if I'm going to take away 98% of their dating pool, I have to make sure it's being replaced by something. Which means there have to be ways, and there are ways, getting them on internet dating sites, sending them to a college. I tell parents, when you're sending your kid to a college, make it a condition. I will pay, if there's a substantial Jewish population, and there is a Chabad rabbi there, the rabbis are doing activities, and there's a Hillel, there has to be, otherwise I'm not paying. Now, you're not sacrificing academic excellence. There's a ton of schools that have that. You can get a top-notch school. Same thing for graduate school, for first job. People have to make this a priority, and it's doable. There are 15 or 20 major metropolitan areas in America that have substantial Jewish populations. Why do you have to choose Wichita? I have nothing against Wichita, it's a nice town. But LA, New York area, Boston, Baltimore, Montreal by now, Toronto, Miami, Chicago. I mean, there's a lot of places they can go. So make sure they go there so they can meet other Jews easily. I want to thank you for listening. I'm glad to have any questions. Before we have questions, let me do something that I'm not comfortable doing, but it's important. I'm a nice Jewish boy. I never used to push my own book. But I will tell you that even if I had not written Why I Married Jewish, I would push it. Every family has to have this. The single biggest decision that our children and grandchildren, for many of us, will be making is if they're going to marry another Jew. You have to know how to talk about it. What I've given you now is a very short version. You have to read it, understand how to talk about it. They have to read it. It is fundamental to understand that this is the big issue. This is the win-win issue. So please take a copy. Questions, comments? Yes?
At what age do you start saying, my position or,
6 months old. I don't know if you let your kids date when they're 12, you're going to lock them up till they're 30. But whenever they're going to start dating, it has to be clear how important this is. I want to tell you something that I've changed on. When I started out, my book, My Marriage Years, came out 5 years ago. And I was researching it for many years before that, but I wasn't lecturing publicly until after the book came out, until 5 years ago. And at first, as I hope you can tell, I don't know if you'll agree, but I'm kind of like sort of a nice, laid-back guy. I don't like abrupt controversy or confrontations. So people used to tell me, when they would ask me what to do, if their kid was dating somebody non-Jewish, or should they let them in the house, or should they ignore them, or fight, or hope it's going to go away. So my attitude originally was that, don't create a fight, emphasize your point, but be nice and civil. So to be honest with you, I've changed. And I've changed because I've just seen a consistent pattern. The pattern that I've seen over years, hundreds, the pattern I've seen is when parents, and I'm emphasizing parents, A, have a good relationship with their kids, they're flexible, they're relaxed, they're not dominating, or they're not trying to run their kids' lives. We have a good relationship with your kids, and parents set down a clear red line. I'm sure he or she is wonderful, but not in my house. I don't want to meet them. They're not welcome here. And I got to tell you, this goes against my whole way of approaching life. But I've seen it too often to ignore it. If this is the one red line you do, and you have a good relationship with your kids, it generally works. So I encourage, now I'm not saying there's no exceptions. If the person's already been dating for 3 years and they've already been on family vacations with you, it's not so easy to suddenly stop that. But I am saying that this is the issue. So you have to set it as a red line. Yes?
what I'm finding is a lot of my kids, they're in their 20s with their friends and everything. They meet someone who's not Jewish, dating, but the girl is going to convert. You see, so this is what I want to
Okay. So the question is that when people tell you, well, maybe he or she will convert. So let me tell you what I do when I have a couple like that. And I want to emphasize, Judaism does not go out missionizing because we don't believe everybody has to be Jewish. But we are fully accepting of converts. Some of the greatest Jews we've ever had have been King David comes from converts. Sincere converts I have converts in my own family, immediate family. Converts are great Jews. This is what I do with a couple. Let's take a typical example. You could flip the genders. Typical example. Jewish guy, non-Jewish girl. They're in love. She didn't grow up particularly religious, or she was dissatisfied or whatever. She's willing to convert. What I do is I sit them down in my office, get to know them a little bit. I ask the Jewish guy to go take a walk outside. And I get to know her, and I ask her the following question. Tell me honestly, if your Jewish fiancé walking outside right now were to step off the curb, be hit by a bus, and killed right now, God forbid, would you still want to be Jewish? Well, if she says yes, it's a very good start. It's not the end. It's a good. There's still years of study and a Jewish court and Shabbat and kosher. Conversion is a serious thing, but that's a good indication. But if she says no, or what usually happens, if she says yes but she means no, and we both know it, and it's clear in the next couple of weeks that's what the truth is, then what she was willing to do was very noble and very romantic and very beautiful, and it wasn't a conversion. And it's going to backfire. People who convert for romantic reasons, in my experience, 95% of the time it backfires. They regret it. They do not give the Jewish impetus into their kids, and it's really a mistake. By the way, in my experience, 95% of the time she'll say no or mean no. Sometimes it's a beautiful thing, and just because she met him, that's how she got turned down to Judaism, she can become a great Jew. There are cases where, the young woman, or it could be a man, gets so turned on to Judaism, they get really into it, and they're the ones who stop the marriage. But you were willing to marry a non-Jew. I'm not marrying you anymore. But the reality is, I'll think of it this way. How many people in the room could become believing Muslims in the next 12 months? I don't mean faking it. How many people could become someone were to give you $1 million, but you have to sincerely become a believing Muslim? I mean, you know what it is to convert to a different religion? If the person is converting out of belief, they are as Jewish as anyone in the room. If they're converting for marriage to make the in-laws happy, it's not a conversion. And when people hear this, and I would say use these stories that I've just told you, they hear it. Because they know it. People are honest. They know what a conversion is. They know it's not supposed to be a paper conversion. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. It's my pleasure. Anyone who wants to ask me anything privately or wants my email, I'm glad to share it. I'm very glad if you take a copy of the book and sign something for you if you'd like. Thank you and good night.
Your website address?
My website is my name, DoronKornbluth.com. You see how it's written on the things? That's my website. You can find out about what I do, and you can email me through the website, DoronKornbluth.com.
Doron responds to emails usually within 5 minutes.
I try.
Thank you all very, very much for coming. Look forward to seeing you throughout the week.